All right, so this morning, as a lot of you, just a reminder that the how we love, and we'll walk through the different love styles here in a minute, but just a reminder that this is out of a book, How We Love, and there's lots of, I love going to the website. We're going to watch a little bit of hopefully, a demonstration about what this can look like as we continue on. But that website has some good freebies on there, and I mean, just things that you can download and you can utilize in relationships. And this is something that we talk about a lot and we use in the therapy world. Is sometimes it's in context of a marriage. I mean, that's why it was written. But the attachment piece doesn't necessarily mean that that each one of us. One of the things that they talk about is that this is not to blame, right? So a lot of us, I've even heard this morning, and I most definitely, Emily and I come from families that are just good, Jesus-focused families, right? And so it's not about like highlighting like how horrible some of us, like really have a decently healthy. So that's not the point, is to highlight the horribleness, right? But we do, and then some of us have grown up in real difficult situations and just really harsh relational homes, and so that most definitely can highlight some of this. So this is not, one thing they say a lot, and one thing that we're going to highlight, it's not about blaming, but explaining, right? So one of our favorite phrases that if you go to our church and you say, what is Shaun and Emily's, what's one of their favorite phrases? This is one they'll always say. All behavior makes sense in context. Right? So if you think about it for a second, like why am I acting or reacting the way that I'm acting or reacting? If we went to any kind of relationship and you have this interaction, and it's like, if they'll stop doing this, then I'll stop doing this. We have a tendency of doing that. But if we were to do this little insight real quick into why I'm doing what I'm doing, maybe it's because kind of what we were talking about yesterday, this anger iceberg, or whatever the iceberg is. So all behavior makes sense in context. If we slow it down and we begin to say, okay, what's going on inside of me? Again, it's reactionary. It's times that I feel hurt, or times that I feel insecure, or times that I'm struggling in my relationships across the board. Like, what's going on? And so understanding my context, part of the context is how I grew up. And so I think that's a really, really, really important part of what we're talking about this morning.
Okay, so who's ever made grilled cheese? Who's ever burned grilled cheese? Okay, what happens when you burn grilled cheese if it's pretty bad burn? You scrape it off. If you have an active smoke alarm, what happens to the smoke alarm? Yeah, the smoke alarm goes off. That's right. And so the grilled cheese, the smoke alarm goes off. Like you said, it's like a bad pan. So you go scrape the pan, right? You turn off the heat, and then you go soak the pan, and you're like, I'm gonna have to deal with that later. And then you clean it, right? What happens if you have a fire in your house? What happens to the smoke alarm? It goes off too. Grilled cheese, is there danger? If you take care of it, that's just discomfort. A fire in your house? Danger. Okay, so before we start unpacking all these things, we want to think about grilled cheese. A lot of things, like Shaun was saying, could have happened in your family, but they are not currently happening. That could have happened to your parents. That could have happened in your childhood. That could have happened whenever down the road, okay? We need to make sure that we can differentiate between this is grilled cheese, and I need to turn the pan off and take the pan off of the stove, and it's just grilled cheese, and this is my house is on fire, okay? So, and we're gonna talk more about this protective porcupine. We're gonna go real low. I have this thing when I was teaching school, if you can't explain it simply, you don't know it well enough. So we're going to explain things really, really simply so you can really know it well. So some of this stuff might feel a little bit childish or like juvenile, but this will be good because then you'll be able to explain it to your kids and your grandkids, and you'll know it really well. Okay.
And I just want to say, I mean, just to highlight, the reason why we do this is because sometimes we don't slow down and truly understand what's going on. So even doing something like this can highlight, okay, what's actually going on with me? Because if I'm concerned, right, what is my tendency when things get a little bit intense or heated? What's my tendency in relationships? When I get a little upset, do I tend to, I don't know, do you think I would tend to self-reflect and go, I wonder what's going on inside of me? What's our tendency when emotions start getting escalated?
Beat the smoke alarm.
Do what?
Beat that smoke alarm.
Yeah, and so that's exactly right. What does that sound like in relationships, marriage? Anger, right?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. It tends to go, right? That's a powerful word, by the way, right? In this context, it's like, you're doing this, right? Or you always, or you never. I mean, if you've read any book on relationships or marriages, you know that those, you always, you never, those things are super not helpful. And that activates the system, and then all of a sudden it goes into blame, defensiveness, and then it kind of shuts down the whole system. So what we're saying is being aware of those types of things that you're doing in order to make the next step of change.
Yeah. So when we start talking about these things, and by the way, all of the results are negative. Okay. So there's no like, when you take a test and you think, well, if I answer this question, then I'm going to get like the good one. Like I want to like win this assessment, right? And am I going to get a good one? Every single one of these is the bad one. There's no way to get the good one. Okay. So because we're all flawed. And so if you're an avoider, boy, that feels negative. If you're a vacillator, that also feels negative. A victim, I don't want to be that either. And I don't want to be a controller. None of them are the good one, okay? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to highlight what family pattern came down the funnel to you. And it doesn't have to be that it just happened in your family. Like, for example, some people might say, well, I didn't grow up in that kind of family. Yeah, but what did your grandparents grow up in? What did your great-grandparents grow up in? Because if you think of it as a funnel, then all that starts to trickle down, and it influences the way you do things. So what we want to do is we want you to see, like, why do I buy this can of tomatoes? And maybe it's not because I'm living in poverty. Maybe it means that like generations before me lived in poverty, and they started buying tomatoes, and now I buy tomatoes. Now tomatoes is a really like funny thing to think about, but you think about some of the harder things. Why did I show up and I have these victim tendencies? And it might not be that that's the family that I grew up in, but maybe back here that funneled down to me. And you're getting a much diluted form of it, but it's still coming down the line. You can't avoid your family tree. It doesn't work that way. Even if you came from a family, like you were adopted into a family, even at birth, right? You can't avoid that family tree. It's just, it comes down the line.
Yeah. So the story about, remember that story I said about playing basketball with my brothers, my dad, and how we would do. So what do you think? What do you think my love style is? Knowing that I expressed emotions through fouls, and we did that. What do you think my number one is? More harsh?
So if you're going to pick one of the five, what do you think Shaun is?
So we haven't walked through them yet. Avoider. Right? Because I didn't actually use words. I didn't actually deal with it straightforward. I would do this covert thing and foul. We would all do that, by the way. It wasn't like my brother would go, I know, I really feel disappointed. No. I mean, it was Okay, it's on. You know, a funny phrase that my dad would say whenever we'd foul him too hard, and I don't know if you use this. I tried not to. I tried to avoid it, but it was like, he said, "Oh, you want to play that game? I can play that game," right? And then it was on, and we were like, "Okay, all right, Dad," you know, type of thing. So, yeah.
So when you get your results and you look at your numbers, we want to first alleviate your fears that like you're messed up because you got some kind of number. Everybody's going to get some kind of number, and we're going to unpack like what all the numbers mean. The other thing that we want you to make sure that you know is that like when we start talking about family of origin things, some people may feel like my smoke alarm's going off, and you need to realize like, is this grilled cheese or is this the house is on fire? And just telling yourself that can help your body settle down. So an example of that would be if I went and ran a mile right here, right now, right, I'd be like, I'd be breathing hard and I'd be like, oh, I'm so out of shape, right? If I'm having an anxiety attack, I would be doing the same thing. So why am I not afraid after I run a mile? Because there's a reason, right? I'm like, oh, it's fine. I just ran a mile. I can explain why I'm breathing hard. And so I'm like, oh, I ran a mile. And people looking around me, and I tell them like, oh, I just ran a mile. I'm just so exhausted. And they're like, oh, you're fine, right? So your brain is a really powerful machine inside there, and it's trying to make sense out of what's happening. So the more that you can tell your brain, this is grilled cheese. We are just talking about a family that maybe isn't even alive anymore. We're talking about a family that I may have never met because it's 3 generations back, but I'm looking at it as it trickles down to me. So you have to keep telling yourself, I am only uncomfortable talking about this. I am not in danger. Now, what happens with couples is they start taking this and they take like, okay, I'm a controller, and they make it part of their identity like this. And then Shaun goes, oh, I'm a voider, and they make it part of their identity. And what couples need to do is they need to think about this as like, I'm going to put this here, and this is what we came with, and we're going to stick it in this box so it doesn't hurt us. And we're going to talk about it.
Together.
Together.
It's our stuff.
Yes. And if you can kind of lay it out on the table, then nobody has to hold it and nobody has to hold the blame. Because this isn't about blaming any family. This is about trying to explain why we do what we do. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more, just how powerful that if you have that in the middle of you, right? And that's why it's so important to think about these things. Again, we're just talking about, I mean, yes, it has a focus on marriage, but I'm just talking about relationships across the board. If you've ever been in a relationship that's just not been healthy, like what is that thing that's in between? Then all of a sudden you find yourself, every time that you think about having conversations or having conversations with them, you view them in a certain way, right? So this thing tends to get in the way, and I tend to see Emily in a certain way, and then I react in a certain way. So it's like if we were to put pink and blue glasses on. What did you have there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have it. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So if you're looking at it from this,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I brought your thing. If you're looking at it from his side, tell me what color you see.
I see green.
No, that's yellow.
It's absolutely green.
I'm telling you that it's yellow. Like, can you not see that?
From one corner to the other corner, it is green.
Okay. See the perspective? So what we want to do is we want to stand here and we want to be able to look at our problems, and we want to go like this and go, oh, there's definitely some green, but there's definitely some yellow. So that's why we have this transparent box, because you want to be able to start developing that intimacy. So when whatever problem goes in here, you're not hiding anything. We're just going to talk about it. Like, it's okay to talk about our families with each other in this safe way. It's okay to talk about like our children. It's okay to talk about like fears and struggles that we have, because we're not going to keep it from each other. We're going to talk about it all together.
Right. Which is a huge change in perspective. I mean, it's huge. And part of this, just to go back, we cannot do that. I mean, this is not a Shaun has enough ability or power to do this. This is really going back to allowing the Lord to do something in my world that I can't do on my own, right? And so, again, as we were talking about yesterday, how powerful it is that when we read things like 1 Corinthians 13, well, like, what is that love that Christ showed us? That love is gentle, love is kind. When I was just describing, when I said, like, it is green from one corner to the other, I mean, how almost rude was that, right? And how much of that was I in that mode of, like, trying to accept or love her or be gentle with her in that, right? Because that's what I'm called to do. But I sure didn't react because I was probably in that trying to prove my perspective. Because if she understands my perspective, then because it's right. Right? And that's where we get stuck.
Okay, so when we're walking through these tests, when we first started taking this test and looking at it, the thing that we love about it, you know how sometimes it's like, okay, you take this test and then you're like, this is your thing, right? Like you're a whatever. So we really like this assessment that the Yurkoviches did is because you can shift. Okay, so the first one is a 1 to 3. Okay, and we like to think about it like kind of like salsa. Okay, so this is mild. 4 to 7 is medium, and 8+ is spicy. Okay. We started out when did we first take this test? Has it been like 4 or 5 years ago? We started out, just to give you some context, in the spicy part. When we first took this test, it was like, first we didn't like the results at all. Well, I specifically
didn't like the assessment.
Yeah, it was a weird assessment, and we didn't like the results. And then we figured it out, and we were like, boom. Like, we're like, oh, this is what we're fighting about over and over again. And so we started doing some of these things, and we started working on it. And then what you do is you go back like 6 months later, and you take this assessment again. And we've done this in our church. We've done this where we did the initial How We Love presentation, and then we came back and we did it again 6 months later for a different age group. But some of the people from that first one came back and did it again. And what we saw, just like what we saw for us, is that these numbers started going down. And then we confirmed that because the people in our church that took the assessment again was like every 6 months, their numbers started going down. And so that's what we really love about this assessment is that you can make changes and move. It doesn't change your family of origin. It doesn't change what trickled down your funnel, but it does change on how you react to it. Okay? Yeah. So that's why this assessment is really just kind of neat. So we're going to go through each of the love styles so that you can understand them a little bit more. But then this will help you kind of see where your numbers lie as well. An 8+, that's going to need attention. Like, it's like, too hot, too hot, too hot, right? This is going to need attention. This still needs attention, but it's not as urgent. And this is where you want to end up, is like, oh yeah, I'm an avoider, but you know what? I've learned how to talk about my feelings. Or I'm a controller by nature, and here's the reasons why that was really important in my family system. And because of that, that is how it affects me. But I don't let that control my marriage or the way that I treat Shaun. Okay? Where are
you getting those numbers? I don't see them on our paper.
Okay, so when you took the assessment, did you get the sets of numbers? Uh-huh. Yeah? Okay.
Add them all up?
So whichever one is like, if you had, let's say it said avoider and it said 4. Let me look at yours. And it said like 4, that is
at the bottom of
the bottom.
It's at the very bottom.
At the very end of the test.
Yeah. Okay, so like yeah. And it says that.
Okay.
So that number would correspond to that. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. So this just kind of tells like the level.
Right?
You're perfect. You're perfect. Yeah, that's right.
I was thinking she didn't have a call something like
that. That's right. And here's the the second quiz, obviously, that we're going to do at the end is the secure connector. Well, I was having a conversation just last night about, the sixth one, right? But that one, the secure connector is just, we're going to talk a lot more about that at the end. But that's going to, again, it's not to blame, but to explain kind of how safe we feel in our own skin and how we feel in this secure connector. And it might be, and again, it doesn't matter if we're, 15 years old or, 85. This does not matter. It's just this funnel that we have to be aware of. And again, we've been married, when we're taking this, we've been doing therapy for a long time, walking beside, having all these insightful conversations, and it did not help. This was super helpful in our own marriage, and honestly, in my connection with family, in my connection with my kids, my connection with church, family. This was super helpful. So it's not just a marriage thing. It's a relational thing. Just be very aware of it. Okay,
Yep.
we want to go through
Yep.
it? All
Let's do
right,
it.
so I'm going to put a bunch of these, bunch of information. Hopefully it's not just going to be flooded in. Hopefully you'll capture, like just look at if you're a avoider, pleaser, whatever, kind of hone in on some of the information. So we're going to kind of fly through this. Always, we're very open for questions like, hey, can you talk about that a little bit more? Or this is very, as you guys know, we love to interact.
Yeah.
Right? So
And those sheets that we gave you, so every assessment has flaws in it, right? But those sheets that we gave you should be the intersection of your two styles. So like Shaun and I think we did avoider controller, but look at, these were also high when we took it. We had a lot of high things when we took it. And so there's like a controller pleaser, there's avoider. And so what you want to do is you want to look and see like, okay, that cycle of how we fight, if it's not right, once you understand more of these, come and pick another one.
Yeah.
Those are going to be there, and come and trade it out, or take two if you want, and see like, okay, what feels the best for us, or what do we want to even like work on right now? If you're high in a couple of things, take a few of them, so then it's like, okay, yeah, we fight in this way in this circumstance, but at work, this is more what I'm dealing with. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, let's go.
First one is, this is one of my best friends. This is avoider. This is most definitely how I grew up. This a self-protection attachment, right? Built around emotional reliance, develops where nurture is limited. Again, this is not like horrible parents, horrible situation, but it's one of those where maybe the parenting was focused more on like, as soon as you can, you become independent. That's what tends to happen. Safety is found in independence.
Okay, and hey, go back one. So talking about like the nurture is limited, that is like the opposite of Shaun's mom.
Yeah.
She is a big nurturer. But you
She's a
step back to a
cheerleader.
generation prior, she had an alcoholic father, right? And so then you can think like, oh, that nurture would have been limited, which motivates her to swing the other way, right? But those patterns are still present.
Yeah.
And so it's not just about like what you grew up in. You're trying to think about a generation back and a generation back, which would be the FOO, family of origin, right? So we're trying to see like, okay, how did those patterns come way down? So just because you didn't grow up in that doesn't mean that the pattern doesn't trickle down to you.
Yeah. Okay, attachment environment, low affection or emotional warmth. Again, that was not my direct family of origin. But even if you go to my dad's parents, my grandmother was very distant. Did not really hug us a whole lot, right? Even as grandkids, which I know grandparents, you're like, how in the world can that happen? Emotionally, my grandfather was very distant. If he gave me a handshake, that would be a victory, right? So again, it had nothing to do with parents, but that trickle down funnel effect.
So for mine came up avoider as well. That was a higher number. And so in that, I noticed like that the valuing independence over comfort. So my dad came from a family of 7, and he was the oldest. And so he was expected to be independent all the time, low socioeconomic level. And so then it's like, okay, we cannot spend time being concerned about your comfort. This is what is available to eat, and this is what we're going to have. So I didn't grow up in that, but the generation before did, which affected how they parent. And it all just kind of trickles down. But then I notice it in myself that there is, in my family system, we all value independence. Like if you can do it by yourself, you're winning the game. That's right. You know, it's like you don't have to worry about your comfort, which goes back to, remember what I was talking about last night about don't get sick? See how they all connect? Don't get sick. You need to just ignore that and move on. So you start to like almost like form this like tree, and you're trying to discover, why do I operate the way that I operate? And so you start to have intimate conversations so that Shaun can understand, hey, it's not about that she doesn't want me to be sick and she doesn't want to care about me throwing up. It's about, oh, that's coming up again, and we need to give it attention. Is it starting to connect for you a little bit? Yeah. Okay.
All right. Core beliefs: needing others is unsafe. Feeling overwhelmed. Feelings overwhelm relationships. Right. So when somebody is, you know, a term is when somebody's too much. Right. Then we want to avoid that. We don't want to hang out with them. We like for our system to be peaceful. I must handle life alone. And it's really interesting because, again, I had close relationships, but there is this, I mean, I have a heart that is very pastoral. I really want to love people. I want to walk beside them. But when it comes to be my turn, I get really uncomfortable with that, right? I'm super okay being that person for people to come to, but as an avoider, I get uncomfortable when it's my turn. And again, it's not a highly dysfunctional thing. It's an emotional outlet piece that I need to be more familiar with and available with. Closeness costs too much. How it shows up: emotionally distant, presentation, slow to share inner world, like I was just saying. I mean, I can share basketball stories all day long, right? But then when you get a little bit closer into the heart, that's where it becomes a little bit more difficult. Peers disengaged under stress, meaning those of us that are avoiders, we're fine, right? When things get really intense or a crisis, I mean, I'm great under a crisis. I mean, I'm calm, I'm good, but a lot of that, again, is part of this process. Prefers problem solving over emotional processing. Absolutely, because it's safer.
Okay, so then, here, go back one, sorry. The prefers problem solving over emotional processing. So again, we're not trying to blame, we're trying to explain. So why do you think that Shaun and I would be good therapists? We're problem solvers. And what else? What do you see? Why would that be a really good fit for our styles?
And you can be, talk to the people, like, non-emotionally, I guess. You don't get emotional. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on you, it's on them.
Right, right. So it's really easy to like think about their problem and then disengage from that and not take it home, right? So what if I was like super emotional and a pleaser, and I was like, oh no, and I'm crying, and they're telling me, and I'm like, this is terrible, what can I do? And then I take that whole problem of theirs home, and I'm like, I take it home, and then I'm like, I can't believe this, but I can't tell you about it because, you know, you can't talk about things because of this license, but then I'm just walking around with all this anxiety. See how that would not be a good profession for me, right? So you think about like how these can be benefits as well, right? How does the way that I have learned how to love people and interact with people really been a blessing to me? It's really not about what's happened to you. It's about how do you handle it? How do you take all that stuff that's handed to you, and then how does God show up and use that for goodness? Okay?
Yeah. Because Because again, the reality of some of this is it almost feels negative. I mean, that's the thing we always get is like, oh, this is so negative or down. Part of it is just acknowledging where we're at and then allowing God to work through that, right? It's not to blame, but to explain and then saying, okay, how can I become healthier in what I'm doing, right? Again, it doesn't matter what life stage that we're in, we're always learning something. And we're providing something that can be really healthy and good. So, okay, marriage, partner seeks emotional closeness, avoider feels pressure or overwhelmed, avoider withdraws or shuts down, partner pursues more intensely, the cycle escalates, right? So it's pretty common in the marriage pattern. Okay, controller. This is kind of from parents. It feels at times, again, it's not maybe a straight up, but it could be one generation up, chaotic, confusing. Parents are a source of stress rather than a reliever of stress. May be dangerous. There could be abuse, neglect, violence, drugs, alcohol, no experience of connection, being safe or predictable. Right, again, some of this is like worst case, but just being aware of that. The controller adult intimacy is safe, emotional intimacy is unknown. Controller's anger prevents emotional intimacy. Addictions used to numb pain, bring relief. People are viewed as unsafe and untrustworthy. Expectations, right? Again, controller is my way, I'm right, and control or be controlled. So it's interesting, even walking through it right there, hopefully, and if controller is part of that, I mean, again, it's not like, oh man, this is horrible, but this is just identifying and just think about like the deeper things about what's going on with you and what patterns are being passed down.
So my dad came in, their family history came into Texas, did cattle, right? Like Texas, like now Dallas, wow, it's great, right? But before, when they came in, you were talking about rugged terrain and you needed to be independent, and they grew up on a dairy farm, and it was very much like, at a very young age you start working, you start handling things for yourself. And why would it be important to control or be controlled, considering that kind of family of origin? Yeah.
I'm just going to guess that, if you don't control what happens on the farm, you're going to starve.
Yep. There you go. If you don't control what happens on the farm, you're going to starve, right? So I didn't grow up on a farm. I didn't grow up on land or anything like that. But I feel those things, those family patterns come down the line where I'm not quite sure why, but when I can control the situation or I can do the work, then I know it's going to get done right. I'm not sure why that is, but I sure do feel it in the moment, right? And so you think about, like, okay, how could that affect a marriage? Like, how would that affect Shaun and I in our marriage?
He's free to do as he's told.
You what?
He's free to do as he's told.
He's free to do as he's told. How could that create problems?
He didn't want to do it. He's an avoider.
I'm an avoider and a pleaser. So externally, when she jumps into that controller part, what am I doing? Absolutely, I do whatever she wants, and then I shut down.
Okay, so if we were to go back, here's me and Shaun, right? And here's our parents, right? So you've got an avoider and a controller, right? And then just knowing about, like, the little bit we've told you, it'll make sense maybe. Shaun's dad is an avoider. What do you think his mom is? Huh? So why would this relationship feel right?
super comfortable.
Super comfortable, right? Okay, so then you go over to my family of origin, and I would say this is probably a controller and a pleaser avoider.
Who's that?
Dad? Maybe he had all three
I
of them.
was going to say a little bit.
These were both firstborns,
Yep.
right? And so then it's like, this is a firstborn, this is a firstborn, this is a firstborn, this is an only. We are like a firecracker ready to happen, right? We've got all our grandparents are firstborns, right? So then when this comes in here and this avoider, so Shaun and I'm a controller, he's an avoider. Why does that feel natural to me? Because I got this right here. And I've got that right there, which fills up that spot. So I'm used to my dad avoiding and then trying to please. So then when we start to date, I'm like, this is great. He always wants to go to the restaurant that I want to go to. He loves me so much.
This is, there's always stories, right? So I'm sorry that I tell so many stories, but it just reminds me that, whenever I found my voice, right? The voider pleaser, when I got healthier, honestly, one of the restaurants is, it's dumb. It's a dumb example, but I don't know if it's real for you. But then all of a sudden, I'd go, there's this one restaurant there in College Station, Hallelujah, that it shut down. but my whole family loved it. And it was called, what is it? Whatever it was.
Whatever it was, I can't remember. It wasn't even that good.
I had a different name. I had a different name for it. I call it Costa
de
Puca.
Puca. Yeah.
Costa. And so then, I found my voice, and she was like, hey, you want to go to Costa Vida or whatever it was?
Costa
I was
Vida,
like,
that was
Costa
it.
Vida, that's
Yeah.
what it was. And I said, oh, you mean Costa Puca. And she's like, oh, okay. So, little things like that. I obviously do that through humor, but, that was part of that. I was delivering and sharing, my opinion and not just shutting down and being a little upset about it. Not big, but little. Like, oh, I gotta eat this, and little comments. This is fake Mexican food. I don't even know what we're doing here. Right? So, yeah.
So even in a small thing like that, though, that was like, I don't know, that was probably 5 or 6 years ago that we were having that conversation. And he's like, you know what? I don't even like that restaurant. I was like, you don't like that restaurant? I love that restaurant.
It's the best restaurant.
And he's like, no, I don't. And I was like, I never knew that you didn't like that restaurant. And so then we had an opportunity to talk about the problem. And he's like, actually, I don't like this other restaurant. And I was like, you don't? What? And so this is, see, our numbers, you can hear it. Our numbers started going down because we were giving attention to something. And then we were starting to like put it out in the little box and notice it. And we both had a desire to be in a more healthy place. And so we were like, oh, okay, well, we don't have to go there. Where could we go together? Or sometimes he would be like, I don't like that restaurant, but I would love to go there for you. And then can we stop here on the way home? So it's the small things, but it has to be okay to talk about this, not in a way that we're blaming anybody, but we're trying to explain it so that we can understand how we interact. Because I don't need to be controlling in my marriage. That's not helpful. Yeah. And he doesn't need to avoid feelings in our marriage, also not helpful. So we have to add in some of this information so that we can learn how to get closer. And so we can talk about these things in an okay spot.
Just some of these can be passive, right? So your second one can be a little more passive. For Emily's dad, he was had very passive controller part of him, and how as we kind of evaluate interesting things, like he would come back from the store when we would all be together, and he'd get 4 or 5 bags of grapes, 8 to 10 bottles of grape juice, and as he's bringing this in, or I'm helping him, or I go to the store, and I'm like, why are we buying stuff for an army? Like, you just have like 4 grandkids at this point. I mean, why are we getting so many grapes? He's like, well, they might want them. And I think that part of it is generationally, when there was such a lack thereof, he needed to control that. He needed to say, okay, I want to be able to go to the house and say we have enough, right? So it's a kind of a silly example, but that's where the subtle controller piece comes in, is little patterns. It just happened to come through food. Like it's amazing. Like when he got something, it was multiple things. I mean, like we'd be okay for 6 months type thing, right? Yeah. Okay.
All right, what's the next one?
Just a couple of, there's so much more information, but we'll go through it. Prominent feeling is anger. All vulnerable feelings are quickly converted to anger. Triggers, criticism, challenge of authority. If this is any time that you feel criticized, kind of triggers that thing right there. A response is whatever rage, right? Sometimes it's rage, sometimes it's underneath just boiling anger. Intimidates, bullies to regain control, whatever that may look like. Okay, pleaser. Here we go. In essence, if you can kind of think about it from a fear-based nurturing approach. So that's one aspect. Parents, a parent is overprotective to relieve their own anxiety, or a parent is angry and critical, right? So when we come from parents or even grandparents that have maybe experienced this, or we experience this, like a parent gets angry. You remember I shared about the dirty glasses? That's kind of an example of that, right? I become critical in a sarcastic way of my kids not being able to clean up after their own self, right? So that's a fear-based part pointed at me. I'm a failure. So I'm going to compensate through this overprotective kind of saying, hey, you need to do this, and anger comes in, or I become critical, right? I'm not a bad parent. I just begin to react like this,
But
right?
it's okay for him to do that, because I remember that day you did the glasses, because I'm used to that passive controlling. So I'm like, oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
I don't see, it's all about what was allowed in your family, and what those unspoken rules of what was allowed in your family and what was okay. So that passive aggression would have been okay, especially if it's like a little bit of humor in it. But like, I didn't grow up in a family, like my parents never yelled at me, ever. Like I have no memory of my parents ever yelling at me. So that was not allowed, right? And so that like passed over the line. So then when Shaun and I get married, Shaun is a very low, he is not quick to anger at all. But Shaun says, I don't even remember what we were talking about. We hadn't been married very long.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, but he's like, Emily, and I was like, oh, you yelled at me. You yelled at the mother of your children. We're going to have
actually
children
said
someday.
this.
Are you going to be a yeller to our children? I never was yelled at. I cannot believe that. I'm crying, and he's like, what'd I do?
I just said
What'd
your
I do?"
name.
You raised your voice. And so it's like, okay, that crossed the line of unspoken rules, because the unspoken rule in my family is you don't yell. There's not this like big emotional outburst. We have like calm conversations, because we're good at avoiding things too.
Yeah.
So it all plays out, and once you start kind of like diving into like what's in your box with you and your spouse, then you're like, oh, that's why that makes sense. Okay, then you're able to talk about it, and it becomes not a like hot subject.
Yeah. And there is another part of this is how we love our kids. By the way, it's kind of a side note that they wrote a book and curriculum about that. So even knowing how to do this in parenting. So even this next part is child manages parental anger and anxiety by being good, right? And that's that first order change that we were talking about yesterday, right? Just stopping the behavior. Like, and as parents, even grandparents, we see this, is that they just stop the behavior, but we know. We know that their heart's not quite convicted. They're not there yet, right? And so, but we manage that, right? And the children manage that by just being good. Parents may require the child to take care of them or function as a surrogate spouse, right? That's where the pleaser comes in. Okay, wants connection to relieve anxiety about disapproval or rejection, right? I want to be okay. I want to go to the restaurant because I don't want her to have a negative feeling about me. So I'm going to just go with it. That becomes really intense. May be fearful when alone, gives and appears to maintain connection and avoid rejection, right? So it's almost this first order connection, if we want to view it that way, right? Kind of this surface, hey, we're okay. We're just not arguing, so we're okay. It's that idea that I'm not gonna rock the boat, right? So I know we're in relationships with some people, and even at church sometimes we feel this way. I'm not gonna bring that up because that might rock the boat. And so that's just part of the pleaser. Eventually burns out and resentment builds over time. Emotional caretaker of others. If I give enough, I'll be worth keeping around. That's a huge statement there. You read the moods of others to figure out what they want. If I'm nice, others won't be angry and critical. If I stay good, then nobody's going to say anything negative about me, right? So that's really important for a pleaser. Is like, I'm just going to stay in the positive with anybody I interact, right? So a lot of pleasers, which again, that's part of mine. If I if I say just enough, funny things, then people are going to think positive about me, and we're good. But again, how many people actually know me? And that's one of the key questions there. Triggers, when others detach, want space, or give silent treatment, anxiety is triggered. Become very anxious. Distance interprets distance as a sign that others are angry and rejecting, and their efforts of giving and appeasing are not enough and successful. Okay, response, freezes, loses words, kind of like, yeah, whatever you want, right? Kind of in that moment, you freeze in order to calm the system. Okay. Anything before we go on? Any questions up to this point? I know we're throwing a lot of information out there. Hopefully it's not too much. Hopefully it's connecting a little bit. Okay.
Okay, so we've done the avoider, the controller, and the pleaser. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Vacillator. Okay, the environment that I grew up in is the caregiver, emotionally unpredictable. Affection comes and goes. Attention is inconsistent. And child never knows what to expect, right? So child feels ambivalent. I want you, but I'm mad that I must wait, and it's never on my terms. I don't know if you've had any of those kids, right? But it's important just that child never knows what to expect. So the response to stress is freezes and loses words, becomes angry, kind of that same thing. How child adapts, how we adapt becomes highly connection focused. Intensifies emotional signals, protests disconnection strongly, and develops anger mixed with longing. So this is fascinating where emotionally, right? So anger tends to be the number one emotion for a vacillator. And it can be a passive anger or an aggressive anger, whatever it is, right? And so, but the idea behind that is if I get intense enough, then guess what's going to happen? If I get angry with Emily, and she's kind of avoiding and we're not really talking, we're not really connecting, I feel like that we're disconnected, and I get angry at her and I start
He's like turning up the heat.
displaying. So what's going to happen? Do you think?
Connection because of anger.
Because
Yes.
of anger.
'Cause
So
then I'm like, okay. Let me go ahead and attend to you. And he's like, I feel calm again.
there's that anger almost overcomes us, and then all of a sudden we have to deal with that. I mean, when anger, passive or
It's like
aggressive,
it becomes urgent.
it
Yeah.
becomes urgent, right? And it encompasses, and there's nothing else, right? And then all of a sudden after that, right, then we recover, and then we feel what? More connected.
Because then
and
it
that's the
finally
pattern.
got all the feelings out. The anger was enough to get all the feelings out. But
Yeah.
couples like this often, like they tend to fight because that produces intimacy in their mind. But it's that false, it's not sustainable
Yeah.
because they'll get some like short-term hit of an intimacy, but then it doesn't last. So then they got to fight again, and they got to fight again. And so it's like for couples like that, you want to like figure out what's the workaround. Like if we fighting's off the table, we're not going to fight like that anymore. How can we work around and we still get the connection? You know, how can we start to talk about our feelings? How can I take a step closer? How can he take a step closer and start to develop trust that the connection can still be made even without the high intensity emotion?
Yeah. And again, anger is, as you guys know, I mean, it can be passive. I mean, if you know what that looks like, and then of course the out in the open, like the yelling or the very intense language, right? So I can even say that part of my anger, I'm going to go back to like describing. If I'm a logical person, then in my 93% of nonverbals, right, that we were talking about earlier, is going, Emily. Right, which is probably what I did when we first got married.
That's about the tone.
So it wasn't like a yell, right? And of course I mentioned to her, I was like, oh, girlfriend, you don't know what yelling is, right? So, but I mean, she was just sitting there, and I mean, there was super confusion. I don't know if you've ever experienced that in your marriage, but I'm like, what are we actually talking about right now? I mean, we were married like 2 weeks, so I mean, it's not like we were very wise on what we were doing, and so this intensity. You know, just captures.
So a vacillator could also, so if I'm the vacillator, you can engage like super emotionally, or you can do this and you can withdraw. And have you ever had like one of those friends where they like sit in the corner and they're waiting for somebody to talk to them? That's what it could be in a marriage too,
Feels
where
like
it's
that.
like, he's going to notice me soon. I wonder if he notices that I ate nothing at dinner. I wonder if he notices that my voice is like, I'm not even responding to his questions.
And then as an avoider, right, if you're an avoider, you're going, yeah, I'm not touching that, right? I'm not going there. Because if I do, then it's going to be worse, right? And then I do that. So that's that rotation. You have to be aware of that.
Yeah, and the
sorry.
vacillator typically is not, you know, all these sound so negative, but a vacillator, typically all they want is like this really great family. That's
Super
all they
connection.
want is like, I just want the connection. Like I want what I didn't have. They're just going about it in a way where if they're in this like spicy range, they're going about it in this way and it's not creating positive movement. So what you do, you can still be a vacillator, but then you're starting to recognize it and you get into here and you can still have the positive connection, but and intimacy with your spouse. You just don't have to withdraw or get angry in order to get it.
And just to remind us, I mean, this is our spiritual DNA. We are created for connection. From the beginning of time, right? When God was walking beside Adam and Eve, I mean, He has always longed and He's created us for connection, for relationship. And that's why this becomes so difficult, is because when we come into in generations, and not to again blame, but to explain, and then like draw us in. I mean, this is really the most important part of this, is connecting with our relationship with God, to get some of these things out of the way that we can truly experience intimacy. Some of these things get in the way of even our relationship with God, which is obviously so much more important. When we begin to resolve those things and start to connect into my relationship with God, that opens up once again more of a possibility to connect here. And so I think we have to keep that in mind, that as we're talking about any of this, it's obviously first and foremost in our spiritual walk. I mean, this has to be confronted in our spiritual walk together. Together.
Right.
Okay, How it shows up in adult relationships: there's a strong desire for emotional closeness, idealizes relationships early, right? So relationships get intense fast, right? Like, hey, I think you're my best friend. Sensitive to small signs of distance and emotional highs and lows. The pattern loop: vacillator seeks closeness, partner feels pressure and overwhelm, partner pulls back, vacillator feels rejected, anger and disappointment increase, cycle repeats, right? That's how it looks. Healing direction is build internal emotional regulation. We'll talk about that more later on. Separate present from past triggers. That's that awareness that we're talking about, being aware of, like, is this current or is this past? Reduce idealizing cycles. Practice steady, realistic expectations. Learn secure attachment rhythms, which we'll learn more about. Okay, anything before questions? This last one. A lot of information. Okay, victim. Pattern is a survival style shaped by unsafe attachment, develops in chaotic or emotionally unreliable homes, built
Again,
around.
that can be passive too.
Very
So it
passive,
may not look
very
like
passive.
some of these like kind of center around like, hey, maybe there was abuse in your home, but just remember it can be really passive, and you may be feeling like a very like diluted form of it because maybe there was something in the past, or it could be more intense with the abuse or the unsafety.
Yeah. So yeah, to that, built around protection and emotional survival, not weakness. You adapt, right? And so caregivers emotionally unsafe or unpredictable. You feel this is the environment. Love felt inconsistent, conditional. Child feels unseen and unprotected. How it shows up in adult relationships: drawn to stronger, controlling partners or relationships, avoids conflict to persevere connections, retreats instead of expressing needs, confuses compliance with love. Okay, emotional experience: low self-worth, chronic anxiety, quiet depression, disconnection from personal desire, going through the motions.
So the victim, often it looks like, you know, with the controller, when things are not going that way, the controller is going to come up with like ready to fight. The victim's going to be like, oh, it's going to happen to me anyway. Go ahead. And they kind of like give in to that, and they'll just be like, okay, well, this is going to happen anyway. I just need to like hold on and go ahead and ride the ride, and then it will be over. That's what it looks like. Okay. Avoider. What's an avoider? Shout out some things. Self-reliant. Retreating. Okay? Problem solver.
Don't deal with feelings.
Don't deal with feelings. Yep, we're definitely avoiding those. Okay, what about a controller? My way or the highway. I like that. Pleaser.
That's
Whatever you want.
that's exactly right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, there's a difference between whatever, which is not, and then whatever, you know, hey, whatever you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah, because it's all about the tone. Somebody that says, whatever, that could really be this, as about like, whatever you want, like, or whatever you want, I want to do. See how just like that tone changes what they are. Okay, what's a vacillator? You're seeking connection. I almost think of it as like you're like, look, whoa, wait. I'm going this way. It's like almost like walking on eggshells.
Yeah. Well, and just to remember that, I mean, the vacillator, again, is that where when I'm very, very sensitive to whenever I don't feel connected, things get intense, right? Because I'm longing for that connection. So that's where the anger can, again, when we talked about the angry iceberg, right? What's underneath is actually what's going on, the insecurity, the hurt, the pain, disconnect, the fears of, and then therefore I get intense. And then that draws us into the same space, not in a healthy way, but it draws us into the same space seeking that.
Yep. Okay, so any questions so far here? Feel like you got it? All right, so now we are going to play. Is that okay to go into that?
Which what?
Our Bible.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so now we are going to play Bible trivia. Okay? And we're going to start thinking about, now that you have this language, you know about the foo, you know about unspoken rules, first and second order change. What else? What am I missing? Is everything we went over? Family of origin. Oh, I said that one. Okay. Now that you know these things and you have some vocabulary to back it up.
And all behavior makes sense in context.
All behavior makes sense in context.
Which is really important in Scripture.
Yes. Let's think of Bible characters. Who fits into these?
I'm going to put you on the spot here. We're going to see how well.
How well do you know your Bible? Who would you put in here? Start going through your head.
I put Joseph under maybe a pleaser. Because he was a favorite
Okay. Where would you put him as a pleaser? What age?
as a child.
Okay. Joseph, child.
Or maybe teenager.
Okay. Do we agree? Do we disagree? What do you think?
Certainly wasn't pleasing his brothers.
He certainly wasn't pleasing his brothers. That's right. Maybe Joseph as a child, maybe he was several things. Where else would you put Joseph as a child? He was what? He was a victim? Why?
Got sold into slavery.
Oh, okay.
He was betrayed.
So this was more Joseph as a young adult.
I think he was a vacillator as an adult when he tried to reconnect with his brother.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a very cool part of Scripture. I mean, just that whole journey of like how he interacted with his brothers. Yeah.
He was the favorite child. So how did that make him think? Why he was the
Yeah, I think you're right. I wonder if it was that passive control too, like almost like passive aggressive, where he was the favorite, and I can just see him. He's got that coat on, and he's like, oh. You know, have you seen people where they're wearing something brand new, and they don't want to draw too much attention, but they want to make sure people see it, you know? So I wonder if...
Telling those dreams to his brother.
Yeah.
And those
Yeah.
dreams, yeah.
Yeah.
So we got the coat, we've got the favorite, we got the dreams.
Well, also, like, during the famine, when his brothers came to him, he was pretty controlling in that situation, you know. Put the money back in their sacks, or, you know, bring Benjamin to me, you know, all these requirements that they had to fulfill to get what they wanted.
I wonder if he might have been avoiding some of that too, those feelings, because remember it talks about where he saw his brothers and then he didn't speak their language, and then it says that he went into the back room and he cried and like avoiding those feelings. I'm assuming at that point he had a wife, you know. I wonder, did he go and he tell her? Did she know about brothers? Did she, you know, you start to think about like what all the complexity of Joseph's life.
Are we looking at other Bible characters too, or are we just
Oh,
Yes.
sure.
sit for a while?
Are you ready for somebody else?
Let's do the story of David, Abigail, and Nabal, okay?
Ooh, yes.
I like those three characters there.
Okay, let's look at that next.
I like, Abigail was like the pleaser, and Nabal was like the controller.
Okay, so tell the story for everybody to hear.
Oh.
And we can all help fill in the blanks.
David and his men were being very helpful to Nabal, keeping his livestock safe. Nabal decides, I'm not going to reward your guys at all. So David and his guys are coming after Nabal and the household. Abigail gets word of that, and she's like whipping up all kinds of big cakes and food to pacify David, and apologizing for her husband, and so saves the family. Short version.
There you go. Okay, so we've got those three characters. Where would you put them? If you were just going to pick one, like what would their highest number be? Where would you guys put David? What?
Vacillating.
You would put David as a vacillator. Okay, why would you put David there?
I just think throughout his entire story, he's seeking connection, but he often goes about it the wrong way. You see that.
Yeah. And this vacillator one also oftentimes anger comes out, that aggression. Yeah. Okay, where would we put Nabal? He's a bully. All right, what about Abigail? Pleaser.
She could have been a victim too of Nabal.
Yeah, she could have been a victim too. That's right. She also what?
Able to handle conflict, right?
There you go.
Negative emotions, giving and receiving.
Yeah. So that is the piece that matters the most, okay? So you got Joseph and all this stuff happened to him. You've got David and all this stuff happens to him. When you think about like what is the perfect family, right? It's really not about what happens to you. It's about what you do with that. So you take Shaun and I's family, right? And you take Shaun and I's marriage. And I think about all the things that we've gone through over the last 30 years. And it's not about the things. It's about how did God show up in that story? How did God show up in that story? And then how do we tell our children? And how do we talk about it along the road? And how do we interpret that and help them to grow in their story? Okay, so we're going to talk about this some in the next couple sessions too. But it's really not about having the perfect circumstance. It's not about having the perfect marriage. So part of why Shaun and I like to go and we talk to churches and we're like, hey, let's throw our numbers up here. Let's talk about our families. The reason that we do that is because we feel like a lot of times we show up to church and everybody looks like, see, I'm looking pretty good today, right? Everybody looks good and they have on a smile and they've spent time getting ready, and we walk in, how are you doing? You know what the number one thing I hear? How are you doing? Good. Fine. Busy, right? And
It's cold.
It's cold. It's hot. We're talking about all those outside things, but we're not letting people engage with us. And I'm not saying you're going to engage with everybody, right? Everybody doesn't need to hear all of your stuff. But who is your little circle of people? Right. Who are your 5 people where it's like, these 5 people, I can depend on these people where when things go wrong in my marriage, when I'm having difficulties internally, externally, with my children, with the who are these people that are going to help me and I have a trust built with them, right? If you don't have any people, man, life becomes super lonely. If you have to keep that facade up that you're doing well all the time, you're going to be exhausted. You're going to be exhausted, and everything's just going to pile. And so part of what we do in our church is we meet with a lot of young married people, and we feel very passionate about like equipping the next generation of people so that when they jump into marriage, it's not, oh no, like we experience. Like we had that first year of marriage was a big transition for us because I was like, you're yelling at me. Oh you don't do these things like I was expecting to do it. And so we help to give them all these vocabulary words so that they have some tools. So when things come in, they're like, oh, okay, they talked about that. Which tool are we going to use? And we need to get busy on that, because every marriage has problems, right? Every family has problems, and we don't do justice to anybody. We're not doing anybody a favor by going around saying that our marriage is perfect. You're not doing your kids a favor. You're not doing your friends a favor. We have to start talking about what's going on in safe spaces, but we have to start being more transparent instead of, and I think a lot of that is technology. It's like, oh, we see this like perfect picture of this perfect family, and then we're like, oh man, I'm not talking to my kids now. My kids, we have a really unhealthy relationship, or they don't want to hang out with me, or I'm estranged from my parents, or whatever it is, and we see these images on Instagram or Facebook, and then we think this is what this family's about. But we all know this is filtered, right? And this is not the real family. This is the family after maybe an hour of working with a photographer, right? And they all look, oh, perfect, right? People have a choice of what they put up on the internet, and they're not going to put up all the stuff that came to the place where they could get to this. Yeah. So we have to start creating relationships in our church and making it okay for marriages to struggle. It doesn't mean that the house is on fire. It might mean that you just have some grilled cheese going on and you need some tools to get it off of the hot stove.
Yeah. So a couple things, just as a reminder. It's fascinating how when we talk about Joseph, and we could pinpoint all of them. If you look at your numbers, right? I mean, you have at least a number. I wouldn't assume that I didn't have too many zeros. You might have some good zeros, but I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? There's the connection of different things. And again, this doesn't mean that if somebody is struggling or has their name beside these, it's highly dysfunctional. That's not what we're communicating, right? That's not what this whole quiz is about. It's about identifying and working through and working with what we know. So again, as an avoider, going back to, Emily, what you're saying, just about how important it is to bring people into your circle. As an avoider, what's the likelihood or how much fun do I think that is? Right? Very, very little. I mean, because when I invite that person into my circle, then all of a sudden it's going against all the things that I feel like is natural, right? I don't know if you feel like that. Sometimes I feel like physically, man, I don't really like that, right? And so what we've done is we've invited a couple, into we always encourage our newly marrieds or whoever, or our college kids, right? A lot of their peer accountability. I'll often say that if you have peer accountability, it's not really accountability. And that's something we're passionate about. I mean, I love the fact that they're sharing it with other college students, but I mean, how many college students have that, the addictions, if it's pornography or whatever it is? I mean, how many of those have really worked through that and figured out the second order change behind some of those addictions? Probably pretty low, right? So they're just kind of sharing, yeah, I messed up too, right? Whatever it may be. And so what we always encourage is find somebody in the next stage, right? So I was talking to my parents about that, talking to my dad, and he's like, there's not many people in the next stage, right? And so and so he said, what they've done is they can, because I often talk to him about some of these things, and we've shared a lot. I mean, just about even about this. It's really fascinating to talk to my parents about this and for them to evaluate it, because they're constantly saying, I need to change things. And so, they invite people they know are spiritually mature, right? The people that really, have this great relationship and connection, are seeking God with everything they are, right? So, those are the people we want to invite into our circle that are not perfect, but are seeking God's wisdom versus our own. And I think that's, as an avoider, that's really important for me. you know, as wherever you land on these five, that's the reason why you need to invite people into that circle, is to share those things, right? And so to be very open and vulnerable about these things. Okay.
Questions?
Questions? Statements, all that, yeah.
Does it make it more complicated or easier for a couple to work through, you know, some of the challenges if they have the exact same scores for the exact same types? Because that's our situation.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and it's probably, see, here's the beautiful thing. You could have the same numbers, but it looks a little different, right? And so as you might have the same emotional reactivity to whatever it is, it's going to look a little bit different. Like, you know, Emily's avoider and my avoider are completely different, right? And of course, you know, how that, as you guys are picking up, how that looks, you know, on the surface is I'm going to make a joke about most things. And again, it's going to, I feel, not like it is, I think it's going to be funny. and then we're all going to laugh, and then the pleaser jumps in, and we're all okay, right? So the secondary one is also important. And if you have both those, again, that's going to be something where it looks a little different. So here's what I would say on how to practically do that is write out what that looks like for you, what that looks like for her, right? And what is that within let's say an avoider or a pleaser, right? What does that look like for me? What is that? And then Emily would do that, what that looks like for me. Because I think that sometimes we just put these words out there without evaluating like what that actually looks like. So I think that's probably one of the steps is like, what does that actually look like and how does that actually feel to me? So that's one thing I would throw out there. Anything you throw out there?
No, I think that's right.
Okay.
I read last night in the little descriptions that it's not a personality trait.
Correct.
Right.
I think we're labeling, our tendency to label something
Yes.
might make it a personality
Yeah.
trait. This is how we're coming at love. the way
Yes,
we
like
Correct.
how did we
Correct.
learn how to receive and accept love?
Yes.
Yep.
Communications type, maybe more than a personality.
Well, and it's not even really attached to you. It's more about the funnel. And so it's like, okay, it's not even something that it's more about like recognizing what did my family of origin bring to me, and then how did I have these like life experiences that happened to me, and how did I make sense of all that, and here's how I walk through life. And so some of it's really not to blame anybody. They just did the best that they could, and you're doing the best that you could. It's to explain, why do I do that behavior? Why do I do that? And what can I trash or recycle to do something different so I can get this moving downward, so then we can have more intimacy and more harmony together. So that's what we love about this, is that you can take it wherever you are, and there's always a growth opportunity. Nobody's just stuck in that. And it's not what you just are. It's just like, hey, here's what my family system, here's what I came with. Now, how did God show up in those moments? How did God shape our family system? Because you think about like, okay, here's David of this vast leader. Well, what about Rahab? I mean, here you go. I would call her a victim, right? Now, how did she work to change her story? Because then you have Ruth, right? That is also in that lineage, right? And so I often think about, you know, like what did Ruth, like what did she show up, what did Rahab do that influenced Boaz in order to accept Ruth, in order to be Obed, right? And so it is really sad what Ruth must have gone through as a prostitute. But what Rahab must have gone through as a prostitute in order to influence the next generation, in order to make this way for Boaz to see Ruth and to bring her close. But that had to happen in order for this to happen, in order for Obed to happen, in order for, see what I mean? In order for us to get here. And so it's really not about what happens to you. It's about how did God show up in your story, and what do I do with that? And that's the Deuteronomy part, that you need to talk about those things. That is the very best family system. If you're looking for a great family system, that's what you do. You start talking about things. You start being transparent. You start telling your children, like, hey, this is what happened to us when we were young married, and here's how God showed up in our story. God can show up in your story too. Because you think about, like, okay, who do you choose to tell problems to? It's not the person that looks perfect, because that's scary. You're perfect, and I'm going to look very imperfect next to you. It's the person that is transparent about their story. Like, I'm willing to talk to you about how God changed my marriage. I'm willing to talk to you about how I've walked through that. I'm willing to talk to you about some hard times. That's the kind of church family that you want to move towards. Is it's okay to have issues, and we're going to see how God shows up, and we don't know how. And we can't fix it, and maybe we don't feel that it's fixable. I'm sure that Rahab thought, she wasn't thinking, how's God going to show up? She was thinking, like, I'm just going to survive, right? Yeah. So you never know how God's going to show up, but what we're trying to do is we're all just trying to get closer, right? That's our whole point of our life, is we're just trying to get closer, and we're trying to build on, maybe you're in this basement, right? Maybe this is Rahab, right? Well, she builds as much as she can, and then all of a sudden, her basement becomes the next generation ceiling, right? She got up to here. Now they're working off this foundation, and they're going up, and they make some big strides. And now that next generation is working off this foundation. So my family's ceiling, however far they got me, I can use that. I can work with that, and then I can build higher. So then hopefully my kids will know more about Jesus.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to
take a break,
and when we come back, we'll start out and we'll just talk a little bit about David, King David again, and kind of start us off in the next session. So I think it's 15 minutes. Is that it, right? 15-minute break?
Yeah, and if anybody needs to change out their stuff, go for that too.